Hello and welcome to DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf and I am joined by Riley Fessler and Minna Stein. Why? I don't know. They're here every day and I just have to, go with it. So today, who's going to, I think Riley will kick us off today because Minna did yesterday.
That's right.
That's right.
The U.S. State Department has begun evacuating non-essential diplomats and their families from its embassy in Israel amid escalating tensions between Israel and Iran.
You know what's comforting about that, by the way? That they actually think there are essential diplomats. Because frankly, the vibe I get from them about the State Department is they think the whole place is non-essential. So I'm just looking for silver lining in these things
that is a
at
silver
this
lining.
point. Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, okay.
A government flight transported some embassy personnel out of the country, while U.S. officials are also exploring evacuation options for private American citizens, though no formal plans have been announced. Conflicting statements from U.S. agencies have added uncertainty, even as the State Department urges Americans to leave independently if possible. With the embassy in Jerusalem closed and U.S. military assets repositioned in the region, President Trump has issued warnings suggesting a willingness to strike Iran if deemed necessary.
Well, we shall see. I've been thinking about this. In fact, I wrote a little bit about it more at my Substack. If you want to go and get my views on it, I have 10 things to think about before attacking Iran. Of course, Trump won't think about any of them. As he said yesterday, even I don't know what I'm thinking. No, he didn't say that. He says, no one knows what I'm thinking. But it was clear he meant, even I don't know what I'm thinking. But here's one thing to look at that nobody's really talking about right now. And that is, if Trump decides to go ahead and do it, which he would probably do to make himself feel powerful and look like he's in command and he's a world leader and so forth. If he goes ahead and does it, then it means he's willing to turn his back on a big chunk of MAGA. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and a bunch of them are already out there raising money, opposing it. Tucker Carlson opposes it. Why is that significant? Well, it's significant because it means it means that is thinking of himself as a lame duck. Just like his big, beautiful bill alienates a big chunk of the Republican Party. Trump, who has said he's not going to run again, is starting to think like a guy who's going to be out of this job in 3 years. And he doesn't have to run for election. And he can just happily be the king, and he doesn't have to get everybody's approval. Well, that's significant for a few reasons, one of which is, of course, there's a big election in 2026. And if he's not out there battling for the Republicans like it matters to him, they're in even deeper water than they think. Also, if he keeps embracing policies that alienate everybody, and the vast majority of Americans are against the United States getting involved in a war in Iran, then it means he just doesn't feel like politics in America matters at all to him. I see some hints of Democrats starting to get wise to this. And for example, in social media, I'm starting to see a lot of Democrats refer to the administration as the Trump-Vance administration. This is an old political trick, meaning you're trying to sort of tar the name of J.D. Vance right now in case he's the guy who's up next. There's a lot of issues that with this war. Per war, and we talked about them yesterday on a great episode of Deep State Radio with Dr. Corey Shockey, with Rosa Brooks, and with Max Bergman of CSIS. So if you want a deeper dive into that stuff, go there or go to my Substack. But that was a political analysis that I just thought is worth factoring into what happens over the next few days. Minute.
The U.S. State Department has directed consular officers to screen the online presence of all foreign nationals applying for student and educational visas, focusing on signs of hostility towards the U.S., support for terrorism, or anti-Semitism. This move, part of the Trump administration's broader push to curb illegal immigration and crack down on perceived campus extremism, includes monitoring political activism and preserving screenshots of applicants applicants' online activity. While flag behavior won't automatically disqualify applicants, it will prompt additional review to assess whether they are likely to comply with visa conditions and U.S. laws.
Yeah, this is the thought police, right? I can just imagine, these consular officers are people who joined the State Department a while back who want to serve their government, who are all of a sudden now being put in the role of censor or thought police, where they've got to look at this. And, one of the provisions of this is, uh, uh, how do they feel about U.S. culture? Do they hate U.S. culture? Well, that can mean a lot of things, right? What they're suggesting is that it means, that they're trying to protect U.S. security. But what they really mean is, are they anti-Trump? Are they anti-MAGA? I mean, if they were attacking U.S. culture by saying, "I hate the show," and just like that, which is the worst show in the history of television, that might even be a plus. Are they going to use that kind of nuance? I mean, don't you agree with me, Minna?
100%. We need more immigrants in the US who don't like and just like that.
In fact, I got to tell you, given the amount that immigrants contribute to the United States in terms of innovation and work and intellectual discourse and everything else, and have made this country great, if we could screen immigrants so they came here, they were smart, they got into good schools, and they didn't like and just like that, we would be a better country.
That's the kind of online social media screening that I think the State Department should be doing.
But that is not what they're doing. This is clearly political screening. When they say, do they support terrorism? The definition within this administration of terrorism is really, really close to, have you said anything critical of Israel? Have you said anything remotely positive about Palestine? That's where will we be in 6 months on, have you said anything critical of Russia or anything remotely positive about Ukraine? Or do you embrace Canada? I mean, I realize that sounds ridiculous, but what we're talking about here sounds ridiculous. If people had said 6 months ago, this is where the U.S. would be, you would say, no, 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 that's an authoritarian state. Even authoritarian states don't do that. Even, the Chinese who know everything about everything, they don't screen people. You don't even need a visa to go to China right now. Okay. If you're going to China for under, like 10 days or something like that, you don't need a visa if you're an American. So, let's think about where this puts us in the world. It's not a pretty place. Riley's busy watching an episode of it just like that.
You caught me. In a 6-3 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld state laws banning gender-affirming medical care for transgender minors, ruling that such laws do not violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. The majority, led by Chief Justice John Roberts, applied the lowest level of judicial scrutiny, stating that policy decisions on medical treatments should be left to elected lawmakers. In a powerful dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor argued that the court failed to protect a vulnerable group by not applying a heightened scrutiny, drawing parallels to past civil rights cases. The ruling leaves many legal questions unresolved, including future cases on transgender rights in sports, military service, and adult medical care.
Yeah, and at the core of this is a legal question as to whether transgender people represent a class that deserves special protection against discrimination. And the assertion, and by the way, the assertion was written, I think, by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who everybody was a week ago saying was too liberal, is that they don't. And you can tell that it was not a liberal assertion because Clarence Thomas joined in with her on this. This is part of the MAGA agenda, and it's being advanced by the 6 justices on the court who are essentially carrying MAGA's water for them. But it's only June 19th. It's Juneteenth, by the way, folks. If you're celebrating, happy Juneteenth. But we're going to have other cases coming down from the court in the next couple of weeks that will be also consequential and I think also disturbing. We'll get some legal experts onto our Need to Know and other podcasts to discuss this over the course of the next couple of weeks. But this is yet another sign that the Roberts Court is making a very strong case for being the worst Supreme Court in our history. And by that, by the way, I mean the majority. The three liberals on the court are fighting the good fight. Minute.
President Trump's consideration of U.S. military involvement in the Israel-Iran conflict has exposed deep divisions within his own America First coalition, with key allies like Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson warning against another Middle East war. While Trump insists Iran must not obtain nuclear weapons, many in his MAGA base fear intervention will betray his isolationist stance and risk political fallout. Despite the rift, Trump appears confident in his support, though critics caution that hasty action without public consensus could damage both his legacy and Republican unity ahead of the 2026 midterms.
Gee, I should have read ahead, shouldn't I? I mean, because that's what I was saying just a minute ago. And it just supports what I was saying. And if I'd known that that was coming up, then I could have talked about it. And you guys might be saying, wait a minute, don't you guys share the stories in advance? And the answer is we do. But I was rushing from someplace else and I didn't read them today. But what she said, that's where that's the point I was making. MAGA could be coming apart at the seams. This is very telling. Watch closely. Of course, if you live in Tehran and you're an actual human being and, you are living in terror every night, or if you live in Tel Aviv and you're living in terror, these political abstractions in the United States don't seem that important. And I think one of the things that's important for all of us to remember is that these wars are a threat to innocent people who don't want any part of politics and who just want to have a decent life. And a bunch of those lives will be claimed on both sides. And I don't think we should, and I think we should make an effort to remember this, in Gaza, people are still starving, still dying, still caught in the crossfire, still being abused by the war crimes of the Israeli government. And it's important that we keep that front and center in our mind, because one of the reasons Israel is pursuing this conflict with Iran is to distract from what it's doing in Gaza, also what it's doing in the West Bank, also from Bibi Netanyahu's legal problems. It's very disturbing that we are on the verge of potentially a significant war with big consequences for the entire world. And the reason that the Israelis started this war, and make no mistake, the Israelis started this war, is because of the political concerns of Bibi Netanyahu about Bibi Netanyahu. And the reason the United States might join in is not even because of the political concerns of Donald Trump. It's about his concern about how he is perceived by his friends, by other world leaders, about his desire to appear strong and not the rapidly declining, out of touch, ignorant, corrupt, racist, old man that he is. Riley.
A new report by over 60 top climate scientists warns that the world could exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming threshold within 3 years if current carbon emissions continue. Despite international agreements like the 2015 Paris Accord, record levels of fossil fuel use and deforestation have drastically reduced the planet's remaining carbon budget. Climate change is already driving extreme weather, rapid sea level rise, and ocean warming, with 2024 marking the first year average global temperatures exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. While some progress is being made with cleaner technologies, scientists stress that only rapid and deep cuts in emissions can prevent even worse impacts, especially for the most vulnerable communities.
Why is this important? Because the largest economy in the world, that of the United States, has decided to opt out, not just from the international processes by which countries are working together to try to protect our environment, but from modern science. We're in denial that this is happening. Our government is cutting funding for programs that could help reverse these dangerous trends. It's funding and promoting programs that could help exacerbate these trends. That's where we are. In many respects, this is the biggest story in the world. It's very likely that future historians will look back and ignore everything else that's going on and ask, how did this generation of people living on the planet allow the destruction of the planet and its environment to take place? I would add one other thing. In terms of the narrow political consequences, everybody under 40 in the United States considers this a priority issue. It is a real sign that the Republican Party has turned its back on the future, because this is a top priority for millennials and for Zoomers. And what is it that comes after Zoomer now? Betas? Is that
I have no
Alpha.
idea.
Alphas?
Gen Alpha.
Gen Alpha, and then there's Gen Betas?
I guess so, yeah.
I guess so. I don't know.
I
what
guess
comes
we're
after
starting over. I guess we're starting, well, Alpha, Beta again. It's like.
Are we there yet, though?
Well, we're at Alphas, right? I think Riley's looking this up online. He always, as we talk, he's probably looking this up. We're at Alphas already, right, Riley?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, and you guys, your generation, are going to have to clean up a big mess left by my generation. That's the punchline here. Even though I like to think of us all as one generation, and history will, by the way. So whenever you're looking at me and going, he's old, tough. History will look back and say they all lived at the same time. You don't think of the relative age of Julius Caesar and whatever. Plato and Aristotle, it's just, people don't think about that. They think, oh, they all lived at the same time. So you're stuck with me. So are the rest of you out there. But we're glad to have you join us each day here at the DSR Daily. Today is Thursday as we're recording this, which means that a little later today, I will sit down with the ever optimistic Norm Ornstein for a look at what's going on in politics here in the United States, particularly in the United States Congress, but also elsewhere across the country. And I know Norm has some very strong feelings about what had happened in Minnesota over the weekend, because Norm is from Minnesota. So I think it'll be a very interesting discussion. I hope you will join us for that. I hope you will join us for the Civil Consciousness we did yesterday, which was great, with our friend Matt Honan, who is the editor-in-chief of the MIT Technology Review, and for everything else we do here. And if you like it, go to the dsrnetwork.com, click on membership, become a member, help support what we're doing for less than the cost of, I don't know, I always say a cup of coffee. But it's like, what, a couple donuts? What does a donut cost? I haven't had a donut. I haven't bought a donut in a long time.
The local donut shop back home, it's like $1.
Yeah, it's like a donut. The cost of being a member here is like half a dozen donuts. And trust me, you don't need those donuts. They're not healthy for you. They're delicious, but they're not healthy for you. Better get DSR and skip the donuts. That's just a suggestion. I'm not body shaming. All right. Thank you for joining us here. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.